Welcome everyone, my name is John Chapman. Earned Value Management and Prince2, thank you for waiting. Prince2 registered trademark, that's the legality bit over and done with. Has anyone read Socialnomics by Eric Qualman? It's the APM Knowledge Share Conference earlier this year. The book was referenced. I'd recommend it because what he says is very relevant. We can find out about each other by Googling us up, can't we? So rather than ask for a CV or something, all you do is Google John Chapman and you'll find things out about me. Edwina, you are right. This has a mind of its own, this scrolling, doesn't it? So if you look on LinkedIn at that profile, you can find out lots about me. But I'll give you a short synopsis for good order. I work for a company called Touchstone. We provide IT solutions to mid-market organisations. I wrote a book on project and programme accounting, which if you go to pmtoday.co.uk, you can get a copy and order it. I was a member of the authoring group of the Gower Handbook of Programme Management. I was involved in the original Managing Successful Programmes back in 1999 when I looked a lot younger. I've done a number of UK and international projects, Treasurer of the Programme Management SIG of the APM, and I've spoken at various events on this subject and other subjects. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. We have to have the nodding at the back, ladies and gentlemen, because you are on video, and I will ask our colleague to turn it around and look at you if you're not paying attention. Now, the reason I mentioned socialnomics is because in the book, Eric Qualman says, what used to happen in Vegas stayed in Vegas. Now whatever we do, we're videoed, whether it's on the mobile phone or anything, and then it goes up on YouTube. So everyone better take note. Right, now within Prince2, who here uses Prince2? Can we have a little show of hands, please? Yes, some of you. Has everyone heard of it? Projects in controlled environments. And who use earned value? Yes, more of you. So what I'm going to try and do today is to show the link between Prince2 and earned value. And this is the work that I've been doing with Alex and the earned value SIG, because we see there's a lot of value in applying Prince2 techniques and earned value management techniques to control the delivery of projects. If you can control projects, that is. I appreciate that's a great leap, but we like to think so. Now, if you know Prince2, you'll know this diagram, because this is the diagram that's going to take us to the land of milk and honey. At the start, we say, do we have a project? Pre-project, and we're in startup. Once we have agreed that we have a project, we then go into project initiation, and then once that has happened, we then have a number of stages of work. And the stages then give us the ability to go forward and deliver pieces of work based upon the products that we have identified. And at the end of the stage, we have a stage boundary. And we go back to the project board and we say, can we move forward? And they say, yes, everything is fantastic. And we then go forward to the end of the project, and then we go to project closure. That's how it works, isn't it? And that's all we have to do. And it's as simple as that, isn't it? That's what Prince says. And there's big books of guidance on it that you can buy. Now, if you read the Prince manual, this is what it says about earned value management. This is a technique to measure the scope, schedule, and cost performance compared with plans by comparing the completed products and the actual cost and time taken against their schedule and cost estimates. Prince2's product-based approach to planning provides the prerequisites needed for earned value management. And that's all you have to do. So shall I finish there? Yeah. Fantastic. There we go. We can go home now and have a drink. Now, within earned value management and working with the EV SIG, what we've identified is there's probably around 10 steps that you follow. The first thing, if you can see it, is you have a requirement. From that, you create a work breakdown structure. Are we all in agreement so far? Yeah. We then have an organisational breakdown structure. And then we create a responsibility assignment matrix. And what we're trying to do is to drive ownership into our project. What we then do from that is we say, well, we can create a plan of events because we know what we've got to do, who has the ownership, where in the organisation, and ultimately what is the requirement. And we can then profile our budget. And thank you to Edwina, I think you presented something previously, where you create this nice profile of the budget based upon the plan, which gives us the spend of money over time, doesn't it? Yes, are you listening to the back, gentlemen? Fantastic. We then set our baseline, and then any changes we track through change control. And then as we go into the project, we start to spend the money, don't we? So we then have some actual costs coming through. We're doing the work, and in earned value management, you earn the budget. You are evidencing physical completion of the project. And you have to perform the analysis to say, are we on track or not? Now, has anyone heard of Ray Stratton? Yeah, Ray Stratton wrote a book, and I'll reference it a little bit later. Every month he publishes an email which is an update on EV. And he talks about this concept of image variance in the last one, which I quite liked. Because I was trying to find a photo to put up here to go with all of this, and the only one I had was about 10 years ago, and I thought I was suffering from image variance, because I'm aging now. But are we in agreement that that's a valuable approach? Yes. So what we want to do is map this one on the right to this one on the left. And we'll have a go. Yes? Now, for those of you who don't know earned value, how do we know we've got there? What the EV profile is doing is it's putting the budget over time, and then we're monitoring physical progress against the delivery. Now, the Department of Defense in America came up with earned value, I believe, if I'm right. And the idea is if, as a contractor, I only get my money when I can demonstrate I've delivered something, that's a very, very big incentive for me. And if we can calculate the value for the money by monitoring how efficiently we do it, so if for each of our products that we have, whether that's a training course or a design document or a piece of software, you can then say, I budgeted that would cost £20,000, I've done it in £19,000, then I'm performing my project very efficiently. If it takes me £21,000 worth of cost to deliver £20,000 worth of budget, I'm not performing very efficiently. So in earned value, it gives us some important metrics that I think are very useful in Prince2. So, the first thing, we have our requirement in earned value. At project initiation and pre-project, at startup, we're saying, do we have a project? The very first version of Prince, for those of you who used it, you went straight into the project. It's like nothing happened before, but suddenly the project appeared, as if a miracle occurred. Now we say, do we have a project? Well, we identify the requirement. The second thing we do is we develop, in earned value, a work breakdown structure. Now, what we include within there is the product breakdown structure that you would do in Prince2. You all do product definitions, don't you? You know what we're producing? And from that, we have our organisational breakdown and our responsibility assignment. And we agree who's going to own what. So in our initiation stage in Prince, we're going through our project planning and we produce a stage plan, because if you remember, we do a stage of work, don't we? And we're saying, what's the work that we're going to do, who's going to own it, on what part of the organisation when we do our stage plan. And it gives us the techniques, earned value, to do this stage planning. So to give you an example, just a very simple example, I'll show you a spreadsheet where we'll go through these. Is that all right, everyone? I think we're right for time at the moment. No, Glenn's itching to get here. Can you see that? Can you see it at the back? No. Can you see that? Yes. Okay. Now, if our work breakdown structure item to level 3 is we're going to run team training and requirement workshops, I'll take that to level 4. You all do work breakdown structures here? You never go beyond level 5, do you? No? Yes, you might. The rules suggest you shouldn't. What we then look at as an organisation is what's the deliverable or the product. We're training them on one of our solutions. We're producing a requirements document. What's the responsibility assignment? Who has to do it? What's our quality management? Because in Prince we have a whole chapter on quality, don't we? What's the quality strategy? What's the earned value? When do I get the money? So, for example, if it's a training course, if I'm training you, either you're trained or not trained, aren't you? You can't be a little bit trained. We have to assume that you have been imparted with the knowledge to do the job we're asking you to do. And if I haven't trained you properly, I need to retrain you. So I would suggest that my earned value method is either 0 or 100. Once you're happy with the training, you're very pleased to pay us the money. And what we estimate is the time that's required by the role in our organisation. So we've done a bottom-up analysis. So in my performance measurement baseline that Edwina referenced earlier, I'd be able to say this is the amount of days that I expect to do those few work breakdown structure items, and I'd have it in my plan over a period of time. And from that, I'm then developing up my stage plan, my stage that I'm going to do. Now, for those of you who know and love Microsoft Project, which seems to be on most people's desktops, we can then do some sort of milestone planning. We can say, well, if I think that that work breakdown structure is going to take 3 weeks, and that one's going to take 4, and that one's going to take 2, I can get a view of the elapsed period of the project. And because I know what sort of monies I'm looking at in terms of days, and I multiply that by a value to get a charge, I can do a profile of the project costs over a period. And that is what I need to do for each of my stages, because I have to get agreement from the project board based upon the original themes of time, cost and quality, won't they? Now, the refresh of Prince also talks about risk, business case, change, and there's 7 themes, aren't there? I can't remember them all. There are. So there's my plan, and I'm now able to produce a stage plan. So I've taken the ideas here of work breakdown structure with product breakdown structure, organisational breakdown structure and responsibility assignment. I've done my bottom-up analysis of time to know the spend. I've produced my plan to give me a budget, and that tells me what I should do in this stage of work. In my project plan, I can have milestone dates for each of my estimates in my stage, and it's in my stage plan that I do my level of detail to take it down to resource assignments. And if you think about stage planning, it works well for us, doesn't it? Because we don't know what's going to happen next year or the following year, so we need to have some money set aside. But what we do want to know is what are we doing next week and the week after and the week after that. Now, because I'm able to do in my bottom-up analysis my estimate of days and group them up by my stages, in this simple example I've got 3 stages, I know what my profile of spend is going to be. And then I can track it over a short period. Now, this was only 6 months of work, but from April through to September, and then we had a little bit of a tail off and we actually closed the piece of work in December. Are you all right so far? I know, sir, I'm trying my best here, and I can see you're feeling a little jaded about this. But, you know, we're doing all right, I think, aren't we? Now, once I've got my budget and I've set my baseline, the important thing, I think, with earned value is that you can track a movement against a baseline, can't you? Because if you've agreed the baseline, it's the variance. Now, Edwina, you talked about CPI and SPI. Cost performance index and the schedule performance index. They're very, very important to be able to say how effectively are we using the money and delivering against our time profile based upon what we thought at the start of the work. It might be very wrong, but at least we have a baseline we can measure against. And in Prince2, when we report back to our project board at end stage assessment, the project board has to decide whether to proceed, don't they, to the next stage, or whether they should stop the project. So here, we set the baseline at the start of that stage, and we have a baseline for the project. And we're then able to say for our resources, if we're looking at what we're bringing into the project, we can then calculate our cost over that period. Now, if you have the A team on a project, of course, everything gets done in 80% of the time, doesn't it? But we don't always have that luxury. Quite often we will have people who aren't quite as good, but they mean well, but they're being trained up, aren't they? But unless you're doing some sort of PERT estimating based upon best, worst, A plus 3M plus 2B over 6 or something as a PERT analysis, you might just be taking a figure, but you're tracking the movement against that. Now in Microsoft Project, who here uses Project? Yeah. Do you look at BCWS and BCWP in it? No. Well, what we do is we set our cost rates based upon the charge to our customer. And then what we're having when we set the baseline is what's our planned value based upon our baseline duration. And then when we update it, we put in the actual duration, gives us a duration variance. And once we've completed it, it tells us what we've earned, the earned value. And then that calculates the CPI for me, the cost performance index. So our actual costs are coming in, and in Prince2 we manage the product's delivery, don't we? We do work packages, and for each work package what we identify is what's that scope of work against some criteria. So as we know what we're expecting to do, that should give us the information to go to our team members. Now we do checkpoint reporting then against our work package. And that should tell us how things are going. And of course, has anyone ever worked with programmers? Yes? No? Yes? If you work with programmers, it's always about 94% complete. You know, and you could come back 3 days after they've retired and it will still be 94% because there's still a few things to be done. But as our project is underway, what we need is a mechanism to gather the earned value information. Collect actual cost by our work breakdown structure element. Now, if you've ever kept timesheets or asked people to keep timesheets, that's hugely challenging to get someone to tell them what they're doing. But perhaps to have weekly reviews to collect our percentage complete. And if you haven't asked anyone the remaining duration, who's got children? You know, when you've got a long journey, the youngsters always say, "How long now, Daddy?" And if you're on the M25, that could be any number, couldn't it, really? But if your team haven't considered it, then perhaps some forethought on how you collect remaining duration and report back in your checkpoint report. Because if you have a 10-day task and you're 8 days into it and you're only 20% complete, unless by some miracle, you know, the water's open and it happens, you're going to be challenged, aren't you? You're not going to get the rest done in the last 2 days. Now, one of the challenges I'd suggest from earned value is how do you decide when you earn the value? Because there's different types of work. So, as I said, if we train you, madam, it might be you're not trained or you are trained. Perhaps if we're doing a design document, we say, well, we'll have 25% when it's completed, you know, 50% when we've issued it, 25% on design sign-off. But what we're trying to make sure is that there's a control in there so that it's only when that's agreed that do you actually then say we can earn that value and report that physical percent complete. Now, as I said earlier, in Microsoft Project, we set the baseline to create the planned value, and as we update the actual duration and the remaining duration, we calculate our cost performance index because it's telling us how efficiently we're doing it. And I think, Edwina, one of your graphs showed that, didn't it? About the CPI and the SPI, which was dipping below 1. So, we're earning our value and we're doing our analysis. Now again, referring back to Edwina's presentation, she talks about, you know, budget, actual and estimate at complete. but we have to look forward in our project. Now, if we come to the end stage assessment, when you go back to the project board, as a project manager, they say to you, well, what do you think? And we go, oh, it's going all right, actually. We've got a few challenges. But if we have some empirical analysis that we can present to them showing budget, actual, estimate to complete, based upon a subset of data, using the recognised indices of CPI and SPI, we should be able to forecast forward in the project how well it's delivering. So it should then answer the question, do we still have a project? Because from a governance perspective, we have to be able to say, does it still stand up to the business case? And if the business case is it's going to give you a return on investment of 40%, but actually the costs are escalating out of control, then from the organisational governance, perhaps you should ask, shall we draw a line under the project, like the NHS IT project? I think that's been cancelled, hasn't it now? Yeah. So the end stage report is used to give a summary of progress. This is taken from Managing Successful Projects, and sufficient information to ask a project board decision on what to do next. Now, what we have to forecast is targets, tolerances, time, cost, quality. But if it's taking a lot longer to get things done with a lot more money required, we should then question whether we should continue. And earn value gives you techniques to put some substantive information to the project board, not just based upon what you might think after 30 years of experience. Man and boy, I've run these projects and I could see it coming. Because that doesn't really wash quite so well. Now, whoever that is, could you turn it off? Is that in here? No. Sounds like something my children used to watch. Watch with mother or something. Now, has anyone come across this metric? The idea is that at the 15% point, as bad or as good as it is, it will stay like that. Now, this is an important metric. Your estimate at complete is your budget at complete over your cost performance index. We'll do a bit more on this. Ray Stratton, I referenced him earlier. He said, thanks to CPI and SPI, and please bear with me on this, reading this text, but it is very important. It is possible to predict when the project will be done and how much will be spent getting there. There is common knowledge and statistical evidence showing this assumption to be valid. The project work is as difficult as it is. How many times have we come across that? Sometimes things go swimmingly, don't they? Other times, my word, is hard graft. Come back to this point. If at the 15% completion point in the project, we know that we're delivering at 0.95 CPI, it's never going to get any better. In fact, it may get worse. So an example. Our estimate at complete is our budget at complete divided by our CPI. So let's assume my budget at complete is £150,000. My CPI is 0.95, so my estimate at complete is £157,895. Now, Edwina talked about doing independent estimate at complete. You can go back through your whole programme of work and you could do all the bottom-up analysis again, and that'll take you burning through the midnight oil and the weekend and everything. Or you can use this magic algorithm. And the point about earned value, and I emphasise it, is that it's giving you early warning indicators based upon something that has been proved statistically. So it's a quick method. It doesn't involve the bottom-up analysis, but it gives you a metric. And only if there's a significant technical issue should you perhaps rethink the whole estimate at complete. But when your project board comes to you and say, John, how are we doing? And I say, we've got a CPI of 0.9, I've got a tolerance level of 10%, so I'm still within my level of tolerance, and I'll deliver it to you within the timescales, they'll go, thank you very much, and I'll say, that's great, remember that at bonus time at the end of the year. That's the message they want, and that's the message I want. The alternative, as I say, is you could do a bottom-up calculation. where you say your estimate at complete is your actual cost plus your estimate to complete, yes? So I've done 8 days of work, I've got a budget left of 2 days, but my estimate to complete is 4 days. I've now had to work it out on a line-by-line basis. And this doesn't take into account Edwina's point on risk, because that might still have to be brought into play. So what's the point on Prince2? Still in time. At the end stage assessment, we know what our budget at complete is, because that's the agreed budget with the project board. We should be able to calculate our estimates to complete, because that's going from today to the end of the project. So therefore, we should know what our estimate at complete is, because it's our actual cost plus our estimate to complete. And from a governance perspective, we have to ask the question, is the project still financially viable? Now, if you stop a project and you write off £150,000 because it's no longer financially viable, that's not a good conversation to have, but it's perhaps a better conversation to have than one that says, well, we'll keep going and deliver something that's not actually worth doing. Earned value, as I emphasise, offers the capability in Prince to give you this information based upon the information you are gathering during work package delivery. Yes, everyone? So what we should be able to say is that was my forecast, any change notes, my revised total, how much have I utilised. So in this example, stage 1, I had a budget of 66 days, upped it to 68, utilised 52, giving me a balance of 15, and an estimate to complete of 6.5. Ah, that's good. That's a green, isn't it? We like green, don't we? Our red, amber, green indicator is green. Our estimate at complete overall is 210. Our actual cost for 52, and our estimate to complete is 157. Yes, everyone? Good. So back to the graph. Now we're able to say, that's my budget at complete, this line here. We're able to say what my cost variance is if I know the variance between how much it's actually costing by my products in my work breakdown structure. What's my profile going forward? If my CPI is very poor, it's going to end up here with my estimate to complete high. And because of the schedule performance index, we should be able to look at any time slip, shouldn't we? Because how often do things get done early? Work expands to fill the time available. Parkinson's law, isn't it? And who's read Jerome K. Jerome? You all know who Jerome K. Jerome is, don't you? He's an author. And in one of his books, he said, I love my work. I take it out every day, and I look at it, and then I put it away again. If we know that things are being done on a timely basis, we don't have this time slip. But if they're not, the SPI, Schedule Performance Index, tells us what the projection is. So, a few book references for you. Ray Stratton's book, The Earned Value Management Maturity Model, talks about how you can implement earned value. Earned Value by Quentin Fleming and Copperman, I think, is one of the seminal texts. Steve Wake's produced a publication, which is a good little booklet. The APM body of knowledge references it. This is the one, Edwina, you're talking about, interfacing risk and earned value management, and that's very good. I mean, the stuff that Edwina was talking about in linking performance measurement, baseline and risk, I think is excellent. If you've not read The Mythical Man Month and you're in the software business, I do recommend that. Fred Brooks's book is fantastic. And it was updated a few years ago. And he talks about there is no silver bullet. And that's my book on project accounting. The one on Microsoft Office Project, that's not a bad book by Shamdial, quite like that. And then if you've not done work breakdown structures, that's worth reading. I think that's a PMI publication. And that was quite good, the performance-based earned value management, because this one talks about some of the nuances of IT projects. For example, how many of you have ever gone into user acceptance testing and you've done all the design work and you've done all the walkthroughs, and then they look at it and they go, nah. And he talks in there, in this book, Paul Solomon, about what you should do to set aside budget later on to rework things, Just because the design's signed off, it doesn't mean that it's going to be signed off by the users at the end. That's it. So there we go. That was 32 minutes on Earn Value in Prince2. Any questions, please? Sir?
Quick question. In the Prince2 context, you touched on different methods of EV measurement, 50, 50, 0 and 100, and you had the, I think it addressed quite well the delivery section of Prince2, but you also had the controlling and directing project products in Prince2. Any guidance still on how you would want to measure those from a performance perspective?
In measuring which bit? Say that again.
You've got the controlling stage.
Yeah.
So you've got management effort happening there over a number of months. Do we go for a level of effort and say, well, just have how much we spent through that way, or do you take a certain value per monthly report that the controllers produce?
Well, if I give you an example, what we do as an organisation is when we quote, if we're working with you as a customer, we would give an estimate for the project management time each month, because we would need to agree with you a budget for the work. What we then look at is we actually use it on a level of effort basis for project management activities, because it's very hard to identify what that deliverable might be, unless it's something specific like an end stage assessment, like a project board meeting that's been called an ad hoc direction. So we would earn it as level of effort, but we're very nervous about using level of effort because it's just spending money and you're not actually saying, well, what's the deliverable? So it probably is the only way you can do it, unless you've got another suggestion, but we don't like to do it because we want to be able to say, this is what you're getting. We also look at what's the percentage of the project management time across the whole budget. Because when we do our analysis, we do both a bottom-up and a top-down view, which you may have done yourself, that you do a bottom-up and then you look at it and you say, does that look reasonable? And then do a top-down view on it as well. Because if we add up everything, just because of the way bottom-up estimating works, you can come up with some quite big numbers very quickly, which actually don't stand up to a top-down review. So yes, level of effort, but I'd be very careful about how much I used it. Other questions, please? No? If you want a copy of the slides, that's my email address there. I'll be pleased to send them over to you. I don't know if Anil's going to put them up on the website. Yeah? But if you've got any questions, drop me an email, or that's my mobile number. Please give me a call. I'll be very pleased to answer them, to go through things. Thank you for your time today, ladies and gentlemen, and coming along. Thank you to our gentleman there on the camera. I hope that was all right. If we finish now and then hand over to Glenn to set up for 3:15, I think. You're on next, aren't you? Yeah. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.